What if the most unforgettable moment of an awards night was not written into the programme? What if the loudest story was told through silence, glances, and timing? At the 2025 Golden Lotus Awards, among flashing cameras and scripted applause, something quietly extraordinary unfolded. No official announcement, no dramatic confession. Yet, by the end of the night, many viewers felt the same thing. They hadn't just witnessed a ceremony, they had witnessed a turning point. This is the story of an unseen power couple, and the night Kai and Tan Songyun stunned an entire industry, without ever saying the obvious. Some award nights are remembered for spectacle, others are remembered for results. But occasionally, a night lingers in memory for a more intangible reason, a feeling that something quietly meaningful is taking place. From the moment the ceremony began, there was an unusual atmosphere surrounding Kai and Tan Songyun. Nothing dramatic occurred, no overt signals were sent, and yet a subtle sense of anticipation seemed to follow them through the venue. Observers noted how calm they appeared, how unhurried their movements were, as if they were not waiting for validation, but simply present within the moment. This composure stood in contrast to the usual tension of an award season. It felt less like a competition and more like a culmination, the end of a long, shared journey rather than a sudden victory. That quiet certainty is what made the night feel different before any awards were even announced. When the awards were revealed, the reaction inside the hall was immediate, yet measured. Best Actor, Best Actress, and later, recognition for their on-screen partnership. 3 honours that, under normal circumstances, would invite celebration and spectacle. Yet what followed was something far more restrained. Their response was composed, almost reflective. There were no grand gestures or triumphant displays. Instead, there was a sense of mutual acknowledgement, a shared understanding of what those moments represented. This restraint changed the meaning of the triumph. It suggested that success for them was not a destination, but a checkpoint along a longer path. The trophies felt less like a conclusion and more like evidence of perseverance, trust, and time invested. For many viewers, this quiet confidence was deeply compelling. It reframed achievement not as something to be claimed loudly, but as something earned gradually and recognized with grace. The red carpet is often treated as performance, a space designed for attention and visual dominance, yet their appearance transformed it into something more reflective. They did not arrive with calculated flair or overt coordination. Instead, there was a natural harmony in how they moved, how they carried themselves, and how they shared space without needing to define it. Fashion commentators later described their look as understated, balanced, and intentional in its simplicity. But beyond clothing, it was their posture that spoke volumes. They walked neither ahead nor behind one another, but alongside. A detail subtle enough to be overlooked, yet powerful enough to be remembered. In an industry where proximity is often performative, their presence suggested ease rather than display. The red carpet ceased to be a stage and became a moment of alignment. Sometimes, the strongest statements are made without words. Award speeches are expected to be polite, structured, and predictable. What unfolded instead felt quietly personal. Their words carried themes of endurance, belief, and shared support, yet never crossed into explicit declaration. Certain pauses lingered longer than expected. Certain phrases felt deliberately open-ended. This careful choice of language created space rather than closure. It invited listeners to reflect rather than react, to feel rather than conclude. What stood out most was not what was said, but what was left unsaid. In those silences, many heard sincerity, in those unfinished thoughts, many sensed trust. Rather than providing answers, the speeches offered honesty without explanation. And in doing so, they respected the audience's intelligence and emotional awareness. It was a rare moment where public words retained private meaning, and where ambiguity became a strength rather than a limitation. The global response that followed was notable not for its volume, but for its tone. Across different cultures and platforms, discussions emerged that were thoughtful rather than invasive. Viewers did not demand confirmation or labels. Instead, they expressed admiration for the dignity of the moment. This reaction speaks to something universal. Audiences everywhere recognize authenticity when it appears, especially when it is understated. In a media landscape often driven by urgency and excess, this story offered an alternative: patience, mutual respect, and emotional maturity. It resonated because it did not ask for attention. It simply earned it. The world responded not because it was told to, but because it recognized itself in the values being displayed: restraint, partnership, and quiet confidence. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of this narrative is that it remains open. There has been no attempt to define the moment, to package it, or to turn it into a headline-driven conclusion. Instead, it has been allowed to exist as a chapter rather than a final page. This choice reflects a long-term perspective, one that prioritizes integrity over immediacy. By resisting the pressure to clarify or capitalize, the story gains longevity. Whether future paths converge or simply continue in parallel, what remains is the impression left behind. A reminder that not all meaningful connections require explanation. Some stories are strongest when they are lived, not announced, and some moments matter precisely because they are still unfolding. The 2025 Golden Lotus Awards will be remembered for excellence, but this moment will be remembered for something else. A reminder that grace still has power, that silence can still speak, that authenticity does not need explanation. Sometimes, the most captivating stories are not the ones we are told, but the ones we are trusted to feel. If you enjoyed this kind of thoughtful, cinematic storytelling, we invite you to subscribe to LVT-SHOWBIZ. Thank you for watching, for listening closely, and for appreciating stories that go beyond the surface. Stay with us, because the most interesting moments in showbiz are often the ones hiding in plain sight. See you in the next story.